All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming today. Today's lunch and learn session will be on to eat meat or not to eat meat. That is the question. Before I begin, I want to introduce myself. I'm Daniel Stape. I'm the wellness director. Also, Elida Medero, who's a health and wellness professor and nutrition professor, and Professor BC, who's our registered dietitian, and she's here to go over certain topics and answer any questions that you might have. So the questions that we're going to go over today: what are the different sources of meat? What nutrients do we find in meat? And what are some of the healthy alternatives to high-fat meats and the pros and cons of a vegetarian diet? When we're talking about meat, there's different sources of meat. We have beef, and there's various cuts when we're talking about beef. We have chunk, rib, short loin, sirloin, round, flank, ground, and cubed. Now, certain of these cuts contain higher amounts of fat. For example, the ground meat tends to contain higher amounts of fat, and the chunk. The more leaner meats would be, or cuts would be the sirloin and the round, the top round. We also are going to briefly talk about chicken, turkey, pork, and sheep, and the different nutrient content that we have in these different products. Let's briefly talk about the nutrients found in meat. When we're talking about nutrients, we can split them up into macronutrients and micronutrients. Macronutrients, we're referring to the fats, carbohydrates, and protein. When we're talking about meat, you mostly find just fat and protein. And it tends to be higher in saturated fat, especially in the red meats. And there's also a large amount of protein. The macronutrients that you can find in meat are vitamin B12, zinc, selenium, phosphorus, niacin, vitamin B12, choline, riboflavin, and iron. Now, vitamin B12 and iron are specifically found in red meat in high amounts. You can't find these in plant-based diets. How much fat do we need each day? Well, we need to consume, according to the acceptable macronutrient range, 20 to 35% of total daily calories should come from fat. Now, when we're talking about fat, we need to keep in mind that fat provides twice as much calories per gram as carbohydrates and protein. So basically, fat provides 9 calories per gram. Carbohydrates and protein provides 4 calories per gram. For health, we need to consume less than 10% of your calories from saturated fat, and it's advised that individuals maintain their cholesterol intake below 300 milligrams per day. How does your body use this fat and cholesterol? Well, fat is an energy-dense fuel source. It has 9 calories per gram, and also glucagon also stimulates or the release of fat from fat cells to fuel the heart, liver, and muscle. It's also needed for the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins, which are the vitamins A, D, E, and K, and carotenoids. And it also insulates the body to maintain body temperature and cushion the bones, organs, and nerves. And now I'm going to pass the mic over to my colleague, Professor Medero, who's going to talk about the different type of lipids.
Good afternoon, everyone. I will be talking about the different types of lipids, and specifically I'll be talking about cholesterol and the different types of fats. So you have triglycerides, phospholipids, and sterols. Those are the 3 types of lipids. However, the one that are most talked about are the triglycerides, because they are the components of saturated fat, unsaturated, and trans fat that you find in most of the foods that we consume. You have to remember that 90% of everything that we consume is in the form of triglycerides. Then you have a small percentage that is in the form of sterols, particularly cholesterol, which is a type of wax that is found in the bloodstream, and that also comes from the different types of foods that we consume, specifically from animal foods. Okay? So when you're talking about the different fats, you have to know about the different types of lipoproteins. You're dealing with the very low density lipoprotein, which is produced in the liver, and it is very bad for you. You also have the ones that we obtain from the foods that we eat, and you're talking about the low density lipoprotein and the high density lipoprotein. The low density lipoproteins are those that come in any type of animal product. And that is bad for you because all of this cholesterol will be attached to the arterial walls, and you don't basically want to have that. When you're dealing with the high-density lipoproteins, those are good. Those are the ones that work as a vacuum cleaner. They go around the arteries. They take away all of the arterial LDL, all of the low-density lipoproteins, and then they will just take it to the liver, and the liver will get rid of all of that fat. So that is the importance of the cholesterol that we consume. Cholesterol is very important. It's part of the cell membranes, and it is also needed in order to make vitamin D, some of the hormones, and bile acids. So we need to have cholesterol. Cholesterol is produced by the liver every day, and we get about 300 milligrams of that from the liver itself, which means that we really don't need to get that much cholesterol from the foods that we eat, because our own liver will make it. When you're dealing with, well, where do we find all of this cholesterol? You find it in the bloodstream. And how do we measure it? The different types of levels of cholesterol are that whenever you get a blood test, your total cholesterol should be 200 milligrams or less. When you're reading this paper from the lab, that's what you want to see, 150, 160. You're also talking about the low density lipoprotein, which is the bad one. You want it to be 100 milligrams or less. The HDL, you want it to be higher, because that's the good one, the one that takes away all the fat. And the triglycerides, you want it to be less than 150 milligrams. Again, this is the form of saturated fat that you get from the different animal products that we consume. It could be not necessarily the meat, but it could be the yolk of the egg, which has a lot of cholesterol, or it could be also the type of fat that you get from either cheese, or you can get it from milk. Still, it is an animal product. So cholesterol and triglycerides, how are they affected by the meats that we consume? If you look at this chart, you will see that we have a lot of cholesterol in all of these meat products, and that the more marbled you have, the more fat you have within the meat, you're going to find that you have more cholesterol and more fat. So you can see that a 3-ounce serving of lean ground beef has 75 milligrams of cholesterol, as opposed to the pot roast, which is going to give 107 milligrams. So you're basically looking for less fatty cuts. You definitely don't want to consume any organ meats, because all that they do is get rid of all the toxicity from the body of the animals. And if you consume that, then you're getting that same toxic material into your body. So you want to avoid that. When you're looking at cholesterol in poultry, it is much better. You can get 4 ounces of broiled chicken and get only 87 milligrams of cholesterol. But if you're talking about the comparison between the chicken breast and the dark meat will always have more fat, therefore it will have more cholesterol. You want to go for the white meats, okay? You don't want to go for the dark meats. Again, I talked about the egg. The egg has about 186 milligrams of cholesterol. You want to consume maybe 1 to 2 eggs a week. You don't want to have an omelet every day made of 2 and 3 eggs, because the cholesterol level will be too high. And again, I tell you that our liver makes cholesterol, so you really don't want to consume a lot of it. The cholesterol in pork is a little bit less if you're looking at the ground pork or a lean pork cutlet. But if, again, we go into the pork chop, it's going to be much higher, because it's going to contain 118 milligrams. The fat content, again, it's a type of triglyceride. We were talking before about cholesterol. Cholesterol is one of the lipids. Another lipid is the triglycerides. The triglycerides are the ones that will have the saturated, polyunsaturated, and monounsaturated types of fat. And that is what you find in all of these meats. So when you're looking at the fat in the sirloin steak, you see that 12, almost 13 grams comes from fat, and most of it from saturated. Saturated fat is the worst fat that we can consume. Monounsaturated is the one that is liquefied. It comes from plants, so that one is good. Polyunsaturated, we get it from vegetable oil, corn oil, that's even better. But when you're dealing with saturated fat, it is a sticky, solid type of fat that is going to cause all kinds of problems in your liver, in your kidneys, for your heart, and for all of your organs. When you look at the chicken breast, now you're talking about the total fat 8.6. So the total fat is going to go down, and the saturated fat, which is the worst one, is also going to go down. So we want to go more into the chicken breast, less into the type of beef products. Then the dark meat, you're dealing with the turkey, and again, that one will be fairly good, but it has a total amount of fat of 13 grams. Why? Because you're talking about the dark meat of the turkey. If you would have chosen the breast, then it would be a lot less. Now, if we were to go back to the different types of cuts, one thing that you need to look at, which is a positive in animal, is the amount of iron. The amount of iron that you find in the sirloin steak is going to be 10%, which is good. The chicken breast is going to give you less, but the one that is the highest would be the turkey, 14%, and we need iron, and iron has to be obtained from animal products. The pork sirloin is good because it's a sirloin. If you go with a pork chop or with any type of cut that has a lot of marble, white in the middle of the meat, that's going to be a lot fatty, and it's going to have a lot of the saturated fat. You really don't want to have that. We get a good amount of iron, and you should stick with the pork sirloin and stay away from the pork chop.
Okay, now that we've concluded our presentation, we're going to enjoy today's meal that was prepared by the Miami Culinary Institute. Today's menu is grilled marinated chicken, some mixed field green salad, and a fruit salad with watermelon, mango, pineapple, with a hint of mint and basil. And up here on the screen, you see our recipe for today's menu. So if any of you would like a copy of this, I could definitely send it to you. Thank you.
This program is brought to you by Miami Culinary Institute at Miami-Dade College. For more information about the schools and the culinarium program, please visit www.miamidadeculinary.com or call 305-237-3276.